All right, I'm trying to be as brief as possible. I'm gonna talk real quickly about my experience with God. It was a scary one. Happened to me. Happened to me about 2 years ago, around Thanksgiving. I had, well, first off, I'm reading this book by William Barrett called Death of the Soul. And I read the summarization of this book on the back, or just the reviews on it. And I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's more like uh, rooted in philosophy and consciousness, and it's talking about how the whether or not the mind is active, or like if the mind is an active thing, or if it's a passive thing, meaning like it exists, but all the elements around it, they just happen, and then we we react to them, or if the mind is ever moving, and then we're responding with the movement of actions around us. Basically, it's way deeper than that, but they're trying to rule out an existence of God pretty much without saying it. They're trying to say that philosophers have proven, and I'm only halfway through, so I could be wrong, but the gist of it is that philosophers have proven that God doesn't exist. Well, that's why it professes in the Bible to be weary of like overindulgence of knowledge and materials like that, because they'll psych you out to believe that there's nothing to believe in. So here's my testimony. Um, I was trying to get my life back in order, and I had a local church, and I was out of my cars. Both my cars had gotten taken. One had gotten repoed, and the other I had didn't have ownership of it, but I still sold it anyway. Bad deal, criminal. But what's done is done, and now I've got 25 grand written off of my credit for that. So I was at a low place, and I was like, well, I went to church, not like playfully or anything. I went like I wanted to get right, but I wasn't right. I wasn't living right, and I didn't have the right state of mind. But I'd gone and I enjoyed it. So um, I went back the following week. Same old. Smoke a cigarette on the way up, or even a half a blunt or something. And on this Sunday in particular, they were doing baptismals. So they did all of their scheduled ones, and then they called for anyone else who may have wanted to get dunked in, right? And then I went up there. So I got baptized, and this is my first time. I grew up in a church, but I'd never gotten baptized for whatever reasons. And I'm sharing this because it means something. This is like, this is my experience with God. I'm telling y'all, there's no doubt in my mind of the existence. Ever since I was a child, I've always known God exists. But, hear me out. You can take from it what you will. You may have experienced something similar. So I went and got dunked under, and the water was super cold, and I was shocked. And it was cold outside. This was in November, and um, I had dye in my hair. Some of the dye came out in the water because it was a semi-permanent. So I was a little giddy from that. I thought it was like a little humorous, but at the same time, I saw it physically as like a cleansing. Like this was all in the making. Like that dye wasn't supposed to be in my hair, and I subsequently did shampoo the rest of it out. I got it out of my hair, and I never dyed my hair since. I don't believe I did. And at the time, I had locks in my head. So make so to shorten that up, it all went good, and I got back into my clothes and I left. Now, when I say that water literally like it cleansed me, like I came out a new person. On the way home, I was just like I felt like there was an extreme weight lifted off of me, like my burdens of sin, not the burdens of the world, but my own burdens, my own internal inflictions had been like risen, like temporarily, because there was residue. And I was just, I threw my shades back on and I was fly as ever because I like to get fly. And I was just waving. It was just to every car that rolled past when I was on Rex Road. So I was waving and I was in great spirits. I get home, I'm still in good spirits. And um, the rest of the day unraveled pretty smoothly. But anyways, so, okay, night falls. Night falls and I go on the porch. I wasn't. I've always been a little bit paranoid, like especially when I'm living foul. So my paranoia at that time was definitely a reflection and a projection of my own life. It wasn't anyone else, but I went on a porch and it looked like to me like my neighbors were signaling one another. Like one honked the horn, beep beep, and then the other down the street did the same beep beep, and then they both pulled out at the same time. But I could have just been over, just looking too deep into the horn honking, and it enraged me. It seems like the devil who had always consumed me had taken a hold of me just that quickly in the same day. I was wearing all black, black sweats, black sneakers, black socks, and a black hoodie and a black hat. Smoked my black cigarette, the germ blacks, all black. I was an absolute cancer. When they did that, instead of facing forward because I thought they were like stalking me or because I had a paranoia about myself and I had so much going on. Like I had caught two cases out of town and I just felt like people were trying to just catch me doing criminal things that I was or wasn't doing. So instead of facing outward, I faced the front window of my house and I smoked looking inward. I don't know what type of channel I allowed inside of me while doing this, but be very careful dealing with reflections or strong spirits. I don't know what happened, but when I went back in the house, I walked backwards. Like I didn't take any frontward movements. And during that moment when I was looking dead into the window at myself, um, a Kanye West and Jay Z song, because I listened to music a lot, and Kanye was like one of my favorites for a long time. Well, the song played in my head, but it was different from when I play it in my own head. It was like it was forced on me. It just started playing out of nowhere. And I walked backwards, back inward. I can't recollect my own footsteps nor opening the door. At this point, I was in a total trance or totally possessed, demon possessed. I walk back in, the song's still playing in my head. When I get to the room, to this absolute mirror here behind me, the song had got to the part of Jay Z. The song switched and it was like, look at the man in the mirror, can't face himself. When I got to that point, I put my hand on the dresser and I stopped and I couldn't face myself. And something overcame me. Like I was like mad scared. Like I couldn't face myself. And then I had this super major urge to urinate but I still couldn't. I was like, I need to look in the mirror because it's like, what the? Why can't I look in the mirror? So I turned around. I went to the bathroom to go pee. But when I went to go pee, I did not look in the mirror. I did a quick dash past the mirror. I went to pee, and when I looked down at the shower stall, the reflection in it, I couldn't look at that. It was like I don't know what it was. I don't know what that whole moment really meant or accounted for. I couldn't look at myself. I couldn't stand my just look at myself. So when I come out the bathroom, uh, I, at that point is when I think I mustered up the energy to look in the mirror. So when I looked in the mirror, okay, all right, there was like an image of I had more hair in my face, in my head, and I looked more wolf. I looked like an absolute wolf. And then this is when God started talking to me. I'm trying to recollect it the way it actually happened. And the reason I couldn't face myself at that moment, when I looked, I saw Satan. Like this was Satan. No words were exchanged. It was just in the mirror. It was like just fully me. And I interpreted it. I thought I misinterpreted it. I was like, is this entity, has it taken control of me or what? Well, now that I know better, it was just that I was possessed. I mean, I had the hands, everything was like had transformed. It was mad scary looking. So, um, I had heard it when I left the bathroom. Something. Let me be real with y'all. Um, I've been like my whole life. Certain things happened to me where I became perverted, and in that um moment of transparency where I saw Satan in myself, one of the biggest reasons that I had taken on such an evil spirit was like it's something about the size of my penis and my discontentment with it. You understand? And words came to my ears at that moment, like, you know, uh, there's an evil connected to that, where there's more than perversion, where it's like I had the strongest, foulest energy, and that I could be one of the worst human beings on this planet. And it was like Satan's pleased with me to know that I could administer some of the worst types of pains. And I was just like, dang. And I had meditated on certain evils. I made songs about certain evils. I had just thought, I planned out certain evils. And it was just a matter of time. And I thank God for saving me from that. Right. So goes to my room after God exposed all of this to me. This is the bad side. This was him showing me the connection to from music to Satan and how it all correlates. I goes to bed. A lot of times when I'm sleeping, sometimes my sugar drops. In the middle of the night, I felt like my sugar had dropped. But when I opened my eyes, there was 360 motion like a tornado, but not vertically, horizontally like this, like a tunnel, and they were all around my bed, engulfing and encircling my bed. And before I saw all of that though, when I woke up, I couldn't see. So I was like, "Dang, am I bugging?" And my headboard was on the against the window of the room. So as soon as I had looked out the window, I had recovered my vision. And when I turned back around, is when there were all of these white, uh, uh I won't, there were spirits. Okay, there were so many of them. It was moving so fast that I couldn't make out like a full physical body, but these definitely were. You understand, like bodies. And if I could do a count, there had to have been at least 100, and they were just going fast all around me. And then that's when I that I had this God complex for a while where I was calling myself a God and saying God made us in the image of himself and I'm a God and all this crazy Kanye talk. And so when I had left from this scene, I woke up again in an area that I can't describe, but I'll just make this as vague as possible. 911 popped up into my head, and there was imagery of the world being done. This was it. It was over with. Everything was finalized, and I was at the top, and I was God. And like it was just exposed to me, like all this time, thought I was human, but I was God. And it was like, what do you do now? Now, when I woke up, I was laying on my stomach. I don't know how I had the vision of the world or that 911 alert, but I had a full vision. Like it was like vague but clear. And in that moment, I was overwhelmed. I did not want to be God. I didn't want to be anything close to it. I didn't want anything relatable. I didn't want, in that moment, I couldn't deal with myself because I was like, well, I knew who I was. I was like, I'm foul. Like, I know that I'm just a fleshly man. There's no way I could be this. Until when I came to that realization, then I had flipped to another scene where my mother and the guy she was seeing at that time were in a room and they were the original man and woman. He was Adam and she was Eve, and I don't understand what that part was either, but I took a lot from it. And I'll stop the story right there. But in those last two moments, there was a level of purity, and I did feel wholesome. I did feel good knowing that I was closer to God and knowing that He exposed all of this to me. Oh, so quickly. But hold up, I gotta tell y'all. This is how I know God is real and that this is my chastisement. After that Adam and Eve scene, instead of me just going back to my bed in dream form, I was cast down. Wherever I was at, way up there, I shot back down through the sky all the way to the window of my room. And when I landed in my body, I jumped up so scared. I mean, I jumped up screaming. And that's when they had to call 911, my mother and her friend, because I banged on her door and I ran in there and I was screaming, I'm sorry, mom, I'm sorry, mom. Oh, because there was one more element of my perversion exposed in that dream, and it was made out that she and her friend had saw me in my worst state, being a sexually perverted man. They had saw me, and so I was ashamed, and I was afraid, nervous. I was so I've never been brought forth like that in so many dimensions in my life. Never through any type of dream. I've had all types of nightmares. I've never had this many occurrences happen in one. That's how I know this was all God and this wasn't a dream. That part with the angels, it was all true. Um, when I urinated, I there was something black that came out of my urine, like I guess like a kidney stone, but it wasn't that because God was still He was still ministering to me while I was hovering over the toilet. Like I was still in that phase of not wanting to see my reflection. It was so powerful, and there's just so much to the story, so many angles that I'm pretty sure that I'm missing. When they called, when she finally had called 911, I passed out, like, cause I think I was in shock. Uh, yeah, I've never been so terrified in my life. I've never been brought to such a head by the Almighty. And I mean, I hope nobody ever has to go through something so extreme for God to make His point. You can really just simply ask. And leading up to this day in particular, I had been a very trying person, and I had been saying some blasphemous things. So I believe that it was It was right on schedule. But God definitely does exist. That peak point that I had reached up there, that's not something. We're just humans. You don't want to play with that. You don't want to know what it feels like to actually feel like you could possibly have been like the alpha. We don't know. So when people say, "Well, if there were a God, then why this?" Like we're just flesh. We are never, ever, even if we cross over into the heavens, we'll never have an understanding of God. And like they're trying to cross that line in this book. They're trying to level with God, like as if there's some type of understanding that we could ever have as human beings. We'll never know the starting point, and we'll never know the end point. With that type of void, we'll never have the concept of God. All we can do is just believe. At this time here that we're spending on this earth, it's not just, this is not the end all. Purpose we believe we're serving, it's just a portion. I've never, I think we all should have to go through something similar. Um, but this is my proclamation of my belief in my highest power, God, and His Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. And I feel good proclaiming that. Y'all have a good night.